Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of KPRC 2 Plus Now. I'm Zach Lajway. Today might feel a little like deja vu, and that's because we're headed back into the courtroom for the third murder trial of AJ Armstrong. The trial was supposed to begin last week, but the judge, Shivani, thank you, postponed it until today, 1 week later. And although we do not officially know why, we do know we could have a timeline problem on our hands. You see, today is June 12th. This trial is expected to last for 4 weeks. This is the concern right here, the 4th of July. These jurors, 6 women, 10 men, do not want to be sequestered for this holiday. So this morning, we have new insight into the trial, and it all starts right here, right now, live on This is the Bench.
Roll the open.
Good morning to you from downtown Houston. That's the district courthouse right behind us. There's going to be a lot of activity there today. The crew is with you. Joel, reporter, Letitia, defense attorney to the stars, and Rilwan, reporter as well, has been in the courtroom a whole lot the last few weeks. It's like deja vu all over again. Not only because this is the third trial for AJ Armstrong, but because we were sitting here exactly last Monday, right? We were. A week ago, thinking that the trial was going to get started, but there was a delay. Let's talk about what got us to this point today. Rilwan, why did we see that delay?
So last Monday around 10:30, 11 o'clock-ish, the judge comes up and says that we would do a continuance because there was an issue outside of the court's control. This was after both defense and prosecutors entered the back room where we couldn't see exactly what was going on.
Literally said outside the court's control?
Correct. Verbatim was her wording there, something that they couldn't, leads us to believe something they couldn't control, because that's what she said, but that's what's delayed us to today, and we're just trying to figure out exactly if we will get started today.
We've kind of postulated what the issue is outside the court's control, and we settled on, keeping in mind that we are speculating about this, but we sort of settled on it had to do with whether a certain witness that was supposed to appear in the trial is an expert or not. And Letitia, can you kind of walk us through that and why making that difference is important?
Yeah, if you remember, and just to bring everyone back up to speed, we thought that maybe this had to do with an expert, that the state all of a sudden decided they wanted to deem this witness an expert. The witness was already on the state's witness list, but listed as a lay witness, when in fact, after they interviewed him, they then decided that he should be an expert. And because it was only a few days before trial, then at that point, the defense says, oh, wait a minute, we need more time to vet this guy out, perhaps to get our own expert. Now keep in mind, this is what we were speculating was the cause for the delay. But what that cause actually is, we just simply don't know at this point.
What we also don't know, that we should be clear about, that we're not clear on, is whether or not this is actually going to start today, right?
Yeah, we will find out when court comes into session, I guess you could say, exactly what will happen today. Has this happened, Letitia, in your recollection, a continuance twice in this way? And in a case that's already been dogged with delays, and again, as Joel mentioned, this is the third trial of this whole thing.
Listen, there is one word that should go with any trial, especially a trial of this magnitude, and that is unpredictable. Trials are simply unpredictable beings. I mean, you just don't know. So many issues or legal issues or witness issues could arise, and at that point, the judge's hands are tied as to what she can and cannot do. What is paramount is the defendant's constitutional rights. Nothing trumps that. And so as legal issues arise that are unexpected with witnesses, with the Constitution, at that point, the court's hands are tied. They must do what the law demands them to do. And in some instances, it may be a delay or a continuance. So yes, This happens all the time.
And
You don't want it to, but it does.
And we'll keep that in mind as we work through today. We'll have coverage all day, of course, especially if we see the trial start in earnest today. We're supposed to have opening statements. We're going to get to that in just a second. A couple of things we've noticed just this morning is, didn't a few people just walk into court with what free AJ signs? Or
Yeah, I saw two men walk in wearing free AJ t-shirts, black t-shirts, white lettering, two of them walking in moments ago. There was something on the back of the t-shirts I couldn't read, but this is what the supporters have been calling for. Over the weekend, they posted on their Instagram page calling people to come out supporting AJ today. They said, be here at 8 o'clock. Show up to wear signs, wear shirts, signs telling people that you are in support of Antonio Armstrong Jr.
Well, let me tell you guys, any two ways that the prosecution gets word of this and brings this issue to the judge, normally she's going to put a stop to it.
How does she stop it?
Well, let me tell you, because it's an unfair prejudice. It's no different than when the complainant's family or the decedent family shows up with pictures of the decedent with RIP, rest in peace, on their t-shirts. I would complain of that as the defense attorney, and the judge will require them to remove it because it taints the juror. It pulls on the emotions of the jurors, and that's not what you want. You want the jurors to hear the facts and the facts only, and to make a decision based on those facts. So all you're doing here is flip-flopping, because there is no decedent's family. AJ is the decedent's family. The grandparents are the decedent's family. So this time, it's support for the actual defendant. But what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so if the prosecution complains of that, then 9.9 times out of 10, the judge will put a halt to it.
We have to keep in mind that we're almost a month and a half deep into this process already, because we whittled down from the panel of 200 or several panels of 200 people, and we got to the 16 people who are going to be dedicating still several more weeks of their life to all of this. My question is, does this push everything back to the July 4th holiday, past that?
So we're going to have some major issues coming up here, Joel, if there is another week delay. And let me explain why. Whenever that jury panel entered the courtroom to start the process of voir dire, one of the things that the judge is going to automatically say is, who has vacation plans? Who has some type of medical procedure that is scheduled that is very difficult to remove or to reschedule? Well, a lot of people at that point is going to say, well, I have this on this particular day. She more than likely, Judge Johnson gave them the date that it would be complete, maybe by the end of June. Well, now you're going into the second week of July. And so anyone who had conflicts during those times, more than likely they're going to lose those jurors. But that's why 4 alternates come into play.
That's a good point. That's a point. I want to ask you this. Is there any point or any time the judge could ask all the jurors, while she's already did this early in the process, if anyone has vacation surgeries, all that stuff, could she ask the jurors, hey, can you stay for another month? Or do you think it will go back to the very start with a whole new voir dire process?
Do they have a choice?
Well, yes and no, okay? Yes, they have a choice to an extent. At the end of the day, the law says they have to be there. And so, although they have a choice, they could not show up, right, and get a contempt order against them. I don't think that would happen. But yes, to answer your question, she will ask them that. Because you think about it, someone takes off 2 weeks, has been playing all year long, it's prepaid. You don't want that person on your jury because they're not going to be concerned with the facts. They're going to be too upset about the fact that they lost a pre-played family vacation.
Right.
So it kind of messes with someone's mind and psyche as to why am I here? And so definitely she will ask that question again, and they'll deal with it appropriately. But remember, they have 4 alternates, so they have some wiggle room.
You guys, we only keep it high tech here for the show. As you can see, we've got our stick figures out, but it's pretty simple. Just, we want to roll through like what the jury looks like, essentially, and some of the more interesting sort of subcategories that we've been able to ferret out with our smart producers. And so we've got 7 people here, and this is the number of jurors out of 16, right, who have kids. Does that make a huge difference?
It does make a difference because kids are out of school during the summer. You understand?
Producers right, kids. Okay.
Yeah. And so you have these folks who have children. People plan their summer vacations around their children's schedule. So this is something that Southern jurors are going to have to really take a look at as to what are those vacation plans for the summer.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to foul some things up. All right, so our next category here is a number of people with ties to law enforcement, which could include somebody within the DA's office, and that's 4 out of the 16. How does that play into it? Why does that really make a difference? And how well do they really have to know law enforcement? Some of them, it seems like it's a in-passing relationship.
That is something that would have been vetted during the voir dire process. I typically do not want anyone that has significant ties to law enforcement, because if you're on law enforcement, you develop almost like a mentality, right? And it's prosecutorial mentality. And so it just depends how close that connection is. It may be, oh, my husband's cousin is in law enforcement. That's not a big deal. My husband is a homicide detective. That's a big deal.
It would seem it,
Yeah, but if one of them's spouse was a homicide detective, I doubt they would be in these 4.
Right.
And that, and from the voir dire process, as you suggested there, it's the former. From what I recall of these people, they know someone in law enforcement. During the whole process, they're asked questions, something like, well, do you have a preconceived notions of law enforcement that if they come on the stand here that you automatically believe them? And they're trying to ask those questions. I think someone said something to the effect of, we're all people. So they're trying to, as you said, make sure that they don't have an unconscious bias or automatically believe whoever the law enforcement personnel they may bring up to the trial might be.
Okay, last quarter. I should have started with an umbrella view here. Is that the 16, 12 of them are the regular jurors and 4 alternates, more alternates than usual, but a pretty big trial, so you want to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed. But it's 10 men and 6 women, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
got it. Okay, so this last category we thought was kind of interesting is the number of jurors, and this could be, by the way, oh God, I'm not very. Put that dude in there.
There you go.
He's squished up. All right. It's either 4 or 5 that own guns.
Yes.
Does that make a difference at all, whether or not you're a gun owner?
You know, I don't know in this particular
Doesn't everybody
setting.
have a gun?
They should, right? If you watch the news. But I don't know that that makes such a big difference in this particular case. If this was a self-defense case, I think that it becomes more of an issue as to whether or not a person is a gun owner.
Yeah.
Because you think about it, if you take the time to go purchase a gun and do so responsibly, you feel you have a right to defend yourself. So in self-defense cases, you know, you tend to want someone who owns a gun. That's really not the issue here. Now, the only thing that I could think of that may be something of issue is, remember that gun was found on the counter. And so gun owners are going to say, how do I handle my gun? How responsible am I with my gun? Will I just leave it laying around somewhere? So that may cause a little, you know, concern in regards to these jurors who own guns. But the overall picture, I don't think is that much of an issue.
And also their understandings of gunshot residue.
Yeah,
that's going to play a big role here because at the time of the shooting, the event 7 years ago, about 7 years ago, they found that AJ and his brother didn't have any gunshot residues on their hands or on their clothing. So I guess they'll likely lean on these people to make that argument once they're back in the jury. This is my speculation.
But you know, just because someone owns a gun doesn't necessarily mean they understand GSR.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
Gunshot residue is a science. And there's, you know, it comes with a certain threshold that must be met. There must be 3 particles present in order for there to be a positive test of gunshot residue.
That's the threshold? 3 particles?
3 different types of particles.
You're teaching us stuff every day.
So much.
Try. Yeah, so there are 3 different particles that must be present in order for there to be a positive return of gunshot residue. So if you don't know those specifics, it's going to be up to the state and the defense to educate the jurors about that. Because a lot of times people feel like, well, if one of those particles are present, then you could have potentially fired a weapon, and that's simply not true. That's not the science.
All right, understood. Let's move along now to opening statements. Things have gotten started around 10:30 because Judge Kelly Johnson still has a docket to deal with, right?
Yeah.
So does she bang that out in the morning and then they start with opening statements?
That's the
what we're
plan. That's
expecting
what
today?
she did last Monday, when we expect that opening statements. Then she knocked out several. Then we went to the whole start of what we thought would be opening statements, and she told the jurors during the early process of this, whenever they're on a break, she's going back on the docket trying to get through as much of it as possible.
Okay, let's talk about opening statements themselves. I was educated. You said that a 45-minute opening statement is not long.
No.
That's how long they have, right?
That's how long they have. It's not very long for a case of this magnitude. And so you're absolutely correct. It's not very long. Sufficient, but not long. And we learned in the last trials that they didn't take the whole 45 minutes. So apparently these guys are good enough, both of them, to where they can actually deliver their point across in less than 45 minutes.
Prosecution second trial wrapped up within 22 minutes, defense 30 minutes-ish.
Right.
So, and it was DeToto that was pushing for that 45 minutes. So it'll be interesting what the opening statements are.
I tell you what,
Which we don't expect to be delivered by John Jordan, right?
Correct.
Who's been doing them?
Ryan Trask.
He did it
Ryan
in,
Trask.
we know, I remember at least trial 2 he did it. In fact, we have sound from that. Can we go to that sound, Jason? Is that all right? And hear a little bit. This is from trial number 2.
You're going to learn that the defendant was questioned that night. He was brought to the HPD homicide, and he waived his rights and he spoke with investigators about this case. And what you're going to learn is that the defendant has absolutely no emotion. And I want you to listen to it and put it in context that you have a 16-year-old who is being interviewed by 2 homicide detectives. He has absolutely no emotion. He does not care, or appears not to care, about the consideration of his parents. He doesn't even have questions for how all of this happened.
And I lost it.
Okay, so that's Ryan Trask delivering. So what is the purpose? Are you trying to undermine who the person is on trial? What is the purpose of laying all of that out specifically? Because he's not talking about evidence per se right
Correct.
there.
Well, you know, there's this notion, the way people respond will kind of signify what they've been through, what they're going through, what happened previously in the last few moments. Because if you remember, when we listened to Rick DeToto's rendition of opening statement, he talked about that his girlfriend, now wife's parents, overheard the conversation, and surely the way that he was acting emotionally, he had not just killed his parents.
Right.
Well, under that same point, the state is now saying, well, when the detectives interviewed him immediately thereafter, learning that both of his parents were deceased, he didn't cry, he wasn't emotional about it, he never asked what happened to them, and so they're pointing out that if he didn't have anything to do with it, he should be devastated that he just lost his parents.
When in truth, I think it's more, this is just my observation being a news reporter, you don't really know how somebody is going to take news, whether they handle it matter-of-factly, whether they're going to break down and cry. I don't think that across the board everyone responds the same to devastating news.
Well, and to that point, Joel, sometimes if it's that significant of an issue, the defense or the prosecution will bring in a psychologist, and a psychologist will educate the jurors to say people respond to trauma differently. Period.
Yeah.
There is no blanket, there is no golden rule as to how a human being will respond to any type of trauma. It's just different. For example, I was raised by a very tough mother. You will rarely see me cry in a situation most women will cry. I just don't. Well, that has a lot to do with my upbringing, and to that point, every individual has baggage that they carry with them that will kind of signify who they are as a person emotionally.
I agree.
So it just doesn't mean a whole lot, but in some jurors' minds, it will.
That's right. Okay, on the defense side, we expect Rick DeToto to deliver the opening, right?
Correct.
He's the guy. We want to give a little bit of time, of course, to how he started everything back in 2022. So let's give him a few seconds and hear how that went.
No gunshot residue on AJ. No blood on his clothes anywhere. No gunshot residue on his shirt, on his pants. No fingerprints on anything. The Houston Police Department, the evidence will show you had full control of that scene. They could have done anything they wanted. No blood in AJ's room. No blood on any clothes anywhere. The sinks were bone dry. No one washed their hands. No physical evidence linking this young man to what happened.
This young man to the offense.
So that's sort of a different tack he's taking. He is talking about the evidence and says there's a lot that does not connect AJ Armstrong to this crime. That seems like it would be sort of a proficient way to go about things.
Absolutely. You would think a 16-year-old would not have the level of intelligence to get rid of all the evidence that would tie him to just shooting two people, in the head or executing them.
Yeah.
How would he know to get rid of all the gunshot residue?
Although there
right?
was a curious Google search he had, right? What did he search? I can't remember.
I can't recall at this point, but it was hours before the incident itself. He did Google search something incriminating that we expect will probably be brought up in this trial here.
That's something I wanted to talk about real quickly. Do we expect essentially things to go the same way in opening statements as they did first trial, second trial? I mean, is it about the same thing?
One thing, the facts aren't going to change.
Right.
So because the facts aren't going to change, you can expect very much the same type opening statement from both parties. I think at this point they may give more emphasis on things that they found were important to the jurors. Remember, we talked about after every trial, sometimes the jurors will agree, they will talk to the lawyers on both sides. And those lawyers, especially if it's a hung trial, will go back and ask, hey, what were you hung up on? What issue could you not get over? And then once those jurors provide that information to the lawyers, they're going to go back to their office, they're going to go back to the huddle, and they're going to try to fix those things. So they may put a little bit more emphasis on things that jurors had issues with, but the facts don't change. So the opening statement should be very similar to the last.
What about the mysterious introduction of the brother? Is that a red herring? Do we expect to see that? Because there's that video that there was a burglary at the family business. We don't know who it is. We don't even know if that's going to be introduced as evidence yet, right? They
Correct.
haven't ruled on that motion. And so there's a lot of things sort of waiting in the wings that kind of popped up in the last trial. I mean, is that going to play a significant role this time, that we don't know the disposition of the brother? Maybe he was in the house, he could have gotten in. He's troubled in some respects. That's what the defense has painted. See the same thing again this time around?
And the defense is asking to bring in his medical records. That's something they couldn't do. The brother's medical records. They couldn't do that the second trial. That's also something the judge is going to weigh in and see if that's something she'll allow.
Right. So remember, the defense has a right to put on any type of alternative theory as long as it's credible. And so if there's a brother out there who has potentially mental issues in the past, maybe there's something that state that he was violent. We don't know, or it could not be. The defense has a right to bring that up. Alternative theories to show that it wasn't me, it could have been this person. And so the state then at that point will say, wait a minute, do you have any credible evidence to tie your theory to the actual murders? And if they don't, then the judge will make that call, at the time, whether or not she believes it's credible enough to bring in. But they've used it before. I can't see the judge changing her mind now.
I think last Monday at this time that the judge had set sort of like a 2:30 out time or had something going on. Is that the same kind of deal we expect to see today?
We're not expecting that today, but again, it's unclear. That was particularly just pertaining last Monday, that she had a hard out. She had, I think, prior things to do, I believe, but it's unsure the timing of all of this today, if this actually goes forward.
Well, to that point, Joel, let me tell you, whenever we give opening statements, we always want to end the day on the opening statements and not start witness testimony. You want to be able to go back.
That's from an attorney's point of view?
That's from an attorney's point of view. You want to go back, get your witness list together, remember what you said in opening, tie all of that into your witness list. So normally you'll pick the jury, give your opening statements, go home, start testimony fresh the next morning. But because of the delays in these trials, I think that she'll probably say, hey guys, when we finish opening, we're going right into witness testimony.
Oh, you think so?
I think so.
Oh, wow. Okay, that would get things moving. Of course, we still have a question as to whether any of this is actually going to happen today.
Correct.
We're hoping that it will, but The wheels of justice can turn slowly, as we know. This is the third trial, of course. The producer, Jason, is throwing something in my face that I don't understand. The prosecution sound.
About AJ.
Oh, about AJ. Yeah, let's give a listen to that. I know what you're talking about. Sorry about that. You're right, Jason. I missed a soundbite there. Can we hear that?
You're going to hear in this case that the Armstrongs lived in a nice 3-story townhome in Southwest Houston. They drove nice cars. They sent their kids to private school at Kincaid. They tried to give their children the best they absolutely could give them. Even this defendant, his parents celebrated him by buying him a nice sports car at a very young age. On the outside, everything seemed to be going great. But something else was going on inside the walls of that Southwest Houston home in the summer of 2016.
That's sort of more of the setup of sort of he was living sort of a charmed life. He had a sports car, it's a fairly well-to-do family. He had everything that a kid could need or want. Certainly wasn't an abusive situation. That's how I read that. I think that's how a juror would read that.
But at the end there,
what did he say at the very end?
At the end, he says, but something went very wrong inside that home. And part of his further argument is suggesting and saying that there's been troubles inside the home with the family for a long time that could lead to AJ possibly doing this. That's what the prosecutors are saying. And the second trial, they allege or claim in the opening statements that there's been arguments with the family. He gotten in trouble. His grades weren't up to par as they'd like, suggesting that this whole meet the Joneses of it all, that this perfect family that we thought they were may have been a facade, because inside the home things were different.
You'd expect it to sort of be picked apart. I think, yeah, let's hear what Rick Toto had to say. It's sort of the same ilk, what his take is on the family dynamic, I believe.
AJ, the evidence will show you, was well liked in the community. He was known as a funny, smart, goofy kid. You'll hear people describe him as goofy. Well liked. Not a family member that I'm aware of will come here and tell you and testify anything bad about AJ. 100% of his family supports him.
100% of his family.
I think that really is an interesting point. That can he safely assert that 100% of his family supports him? I haven't seen anybody come out against him.
He can if it's the truth.
It seems to be the truth.
Absolutely.
I mean, I haven't heard anybody voraciously coming out saying otherwise. And certainly the courtroom is packed with people who support AJ Armstrong.
Majority of the courtroom on Monday was all AJ Armstrong family members, supporters, and we have more supporters out here, as we mentioned earlier, wearing those free AJ Armstrong shirts.
I tell you, I always ask my clients to bring as much family as they possibly can. Number one, they don't bring as many as AJ has brought to court, I can tell you that. And when I'm asking them to do it, it's not a family member who is the potential victim in the case. It's someone they don't even know. So that tells you the magnitude of what message that sends to the jurors that AJ's entire family is willing to come and stand behind him when it is their family members who are the potential victims in this case.
Right. I think that really would register with the juror.
It registers. There's no way it doesn't.
Okay, so moving forward today, we're going to sort of get toward the wrap-up of our bench show here on KPRC 2+, but we want to talk about moving forward from today and onward. Just quickly, sort of, if you guys don't mind, we'll lay out the timeline for today and then the timeline moving forward from here, if you guys don't mind.
Yeah.
Jump in, chime in with what you know.
If the timeline proceeds itself like last week, it's what we expected. The judge told them opening statements for both sides, and there was possibility of one witness testimony, which you expect she will rush through. She's told the jury previously that they would try to wrap this all up by the end of June. That likely will change because of last week's delay, and if we start today itself. And then once it's done with testimony, it goes into the jury's hands, which in the last few trials they've taken between a couple of hours. It's been extended hours, I say, a long time, I say maybe 2 days or so to come up with, well, nothing, because they were hung juries both times.
Yeah.
Yep, so I anticipate if they do get started today, opening statements will begin around 10:30 or so, provided there are no legal issues. I do anticipate they will probably go right into the witnesses today because they lost a week's time. Now let's say for some reason that it doesn't start today. What does that mean? Well, what it means is they're going to have to probably take another poll of these jurors to see what vacation schedule, medical procedures, or any potential conflicts that they may have, so that they could go ahead and remove those jurors and seat the alternate jurors as they, line up. And so that's things to think about. Now, the good part is that this week that they were not in trial, those individuals were able to go back and do some work, handle responsibilities with their families, the jurors were, and maybe put themselves ahead of schedule because of this. But believe it or not, most citizens take this process very seriously, and they will be present and they will do what they can. I remember we picked a jury in that big Arkema chemical plant case, and it was right in the midst of COVID. We really took a 7-month hiatus in the middle of the trial due to the pandemic. And every one of those jurors, believe it or not, came back, heard the rest of the evidence, and was prepared to render a verdict before the judge issued her verdict, over there.
Can I ask one housekeeping item? Okay, so suppose that some of the jurors, since we're extending the timeline, could go to July 4th. We don't know. The whole show is basically speculation, folks. But if they do take some of the backup, some of the, what are we calling them? Alternates, and make them the main jurors, do they replace the alternates, or now you're thin on alternates?
Oh, no, now you're thin on alternates.
That's how it works. Okay.
Right, that's how it works.
I got it. All right, so that's, I'm learning things every day, folks. The AJ Armstrong trial, opening statements are supposed to happen today. They were supposed to happen last week as well. We're going to be covering this throughout the day. Rowan, you're going to go up in the
Going up
right?
shortly.
All right. And Letitia, thanks so much for being here. You're clearly our expert in matters regarding the law. So we're going to send it back to you, Zach. We've gotten it started here for you today.
Yeah, Joel, very fascinating. We will be waiting and watching. Thank you very much, sir.